respects, although it's not at the forefront, when our branch, which really works in coordination with other branches of government that are on the ground doing this kind of work, when we look at what they are up to, they are doing adaptation, and some of them are calling it adaptation, and others aren't. So we'll look at a couple projects that are on the go. Again, I'm not the lead person on the projects, but I've spoken with the departments, and we work in collaboration with the departments, so hopefully I can articulate what's happening on the ground. Just as a side note, when I got on the plane this morning, the headline of the Free Press was $1 million a day, and that's the cost to manage our forest fire problem this week. And we've budgeted $14 million for this year. We've got a couple of weeks of leeway, and then we're in the red. So. Speaking of costs, so we do understand that the costs of unpredictable weather, the 97 flood cost us $380 million. Forest fires in 2003 cost us $64. And there's also issues around crop insurance payments and, of course, lost revenue to our hydro utility. So almost $500 million in 03-04. Tornadoes and hailstorms in 2007, we had Canada's, I think it was an F4 tornado, F5 tornado, the strongest tornado ever experienced in Canada. And we don't attribute this to climate change, but I think we can see some trends occurring. And infrastructure costs, our flood protection costs, water management, moving winter roads to land for safety and sustainability. These are all costs that are mounting in our government. And as a branch, we're a new branch, and we were talking a little bit about horizontal decision making, and what we've established is a committee of deputy ministers from various departments, from finance, conservation, agriculture, intergovernmental affairs, our hydro utility as well. And I don't know what it's like in other provinces, but in Manitoba, deputy ministers tend not to be political. So these are civil servants, and we're able to meet monthly and discuss climate change initiatives, across departments, and how departments sometimes they're at odds in terms of their initiatives. We're improving our infrastructure in some areas and working on climate initiatives in other areas, and raising speed limits in other areas. And some of these things don't always come together or dovetail as we would like. So it's a good forum for us to be able to sit down and understand what each department is doing and how there might be potential conflicts.
I'll sign up.
Somebody pull the plug.
It might have been me, but I don't think so.
If you have any chalk, you might draw some.
I do have a slide that shows the current situation with our floodway and the upgraded situation, like the modeling, and if I can get that up, that would be great. So I'll draw it with chalk.
Just leave it dead, they'll be here.
It says it's raining.
They're usually pretty bad.
So in terms of climate policy in Manitoba, we started off in 2001. We had a task force that went around the province, and was chaired by Lloyd Axworthy, the former Foreign Affairs Minister of Canada, and who's now the president of our University of Winnipeg. And that was probably, they issued a very broad policy document that translated into a 2002 climate change plan for the province. And following that, there was another more broad strategy that looked at some of the strategic priorities we'd be looking at as a government, and climate change is the top priority. And more recently we've released our updated climate plan, and that was in 2000, or this past April. And again, the focus is on mitigation. There are some, there's one chapter on adaptation, but it's very preliminary.
No.
It's over here.
So do you need to do a function F4 or something?
Still, let's wait until it gets to 0, maybe.
Thank you.
It just died.
We haven't even had
Really wasn't
to
working.
Phil?
Excellent.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good enough. Thank you.
So this is the updated climate change action plan. And as you can see, the focus in the province really has been on mitigation and on meeting our Kyoto targets. The legislation actually embeds a variation of the Kyoto target into law. In terms of our emissions profile, again, transportation and agriculture are our largest emitters, and the focus has been on these two sectors. In terms of the predicted negative impacts of climate change on Manitoba, again, a greater frequency of extreme conditions, flooding, severe erosion. We have issues with Lake Winnipeg, deterioration of northern winter roads and our northern railways, and potential impacts on hydroelectric power generation, as the earlier slide illustrated. There's also been an Arctic assessment that's been completed, looking at the warming that's likely to occur, accelerated global warming as a result of permafrost melting and additional methane. Issues around sea ice, as well as habitat for polar bears, looking also at the impacts on indigenous communities. Some of the potential benefits that are cited, and this is out from the latest NRCan report. I think agriculture is cited as one of the more adaptable sectors. Warmer winters with fewer snow events may have or lead to lower costs of snow and ice removal. I think that's probably going to be offset by increased expenses on the potable side, but we're also looking at extending an extended shipping season for the Port of Churchill. So the floodway expansion was brought up as, I guess, the premier project that deals with adaptation, and oddly, it's never really been discussed, I think, in the media or widely in the public as an adaptation to climate change. It's being expanded from a 1 in 90 year flood to a 1 in 700 year flood. I'll also be talking about a little bit about integrated watershed management planning, so those two things I'll speak on today. Again, northern winter roads, they're being located from ice to land for safety and sustainability. There's some land planning initiatives on the east side of Lake Winnipeg that are relying heavily on traditional knowledge to inform adaptive decision making. Our EMO, they're preparing municipal emergency management plans. And our provincial land use planning policies are being updated to include provisions for adaptation. So now onto the floodway. It was built in the 60s. It's a channel that can divert water around Winnipeg and limits the amount of water that flows through the city. And this is the extent of flooding that occurred in 97, and we can see where the floodway does begin to divert water around the city. I think from an adaptation perspective, it's never really been touted, the expansion as an adaptation to climate change. I think we've been looking more at what happened in 97, and that we don't want to see another flood that will potentially be worse than this and cause even greater problems. We did have to expand some of the dikes that along the bottom of the green line there, where the overland flooding would have continued as well. And those dikes have since also been made permanent. The floodway is about 48 kilometers long. It was constructed between 1962 and 1968. It saved the province more than $10 billion in flood losses. It's crossed by the Trans-Canada Highway, 2 railways, Manitoba Hydro's transmission towers, as well as Winnipeg's water supply that comes from Shoal Lake, Ontario. And it's operated over 20 times between 1969 and 2004. So the largest flood in recorded history of Manitoba took place in 1826. It was 40% larger than the 97 flood. It's estimated that a repeat repeat of the 1826 level flood would cost the province more than $5 billion in damages. And since the 1997 flood, Canada and Manitoba invested more than $130 million in flood protection measures. So this is what the existing condition would be like if there was a 1 in 700-year flood. And that's on this side here, obviously. The brown represents overland flooding, and the blue represents overland flooding, and the brown represents basement and sewer flooding. And the slide, or the picture on the right, illustrates how the condition would change after the upgrade has been made. So it will protect residents from a flood larger than the 97 flood of this century, including the level that was experienced in 1826. It will increase the capacity significantly from 1,700 cubic meters per second to 4,000 cubic meters per second. We'll be excavating more than 21 million cubic meters of earth,